without further ado, I think why we have gathered here is to listen to two very eminent speakers. So, firstly, we have Dr. Ram Punyani. It's very difficult to introduce Ram because his popularity really it increases every day. But briefly, if I have to introduce him, he was a former professor at IIT Bombay. He's a national international scholar, speaker. He has authored several books which are referred to everyone who wants to read on communalism, secularism, related topics. And of course, he has a huge fan following on YouTube. That kind of reflects on the kind of insights he has given into this topic. So, welcome, Ram. And second, we have Irfan Engineer, who is the director of Center for Study of Society and Secularism. He is the editor of the Indian Journal of Secularism. And he has also authored a lot of books and speaks extensively in colleges, institutions, shedding light on these topics. So welcome, Irfan Engineer. Can we request Ram to begin?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you, Neha, for this generous introduction. And I must compliment the organizers. Of course, I am also a part of it, for selecting this topic. Now, on one hand, we are talking of Indian democracy. On the second hand, we are talking of plight of the religious minority. Of course, all through my talk, when I'll be talking of minorities, it's basically...
It's gone. She was very clear, no?
Am I clear? Hello? Neha, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes.
Okay. I'll carry on.
Ram,
If there's
it's
something
a
just...
little break.
Everybody
It's breaking a
please
bit.
mute your mic because it disturbs the...
Good evening, sir. Sajid Khan here.
Oh, okay, Sajid.
Just
Okay.
1 minute, Ram.
Yes, sir. The viewer are saying कि हिंदी में करना चाहिए तो अच्छा रहेगा. बहुत सारे viewers बोल रहे कि हिंदी will be good. So English हिंदी दोनों mix रखेंगे तो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा.
Okay. Okay.
Just 1 second, sorry for disturbing. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, Ranu.
I think Indira's mic has to be unmute. I think she's not conscious that her mic is not mute.
Everybody please mute your mic except the speaker.
Please, like I said, it would be great. Otherwise, we will be hearing all kind of sounds. So please, anyone who's not speaking, please unmute their mics.
Yours is on mute.
Only
No,
then
no,
the
please
speaker-
mute your mics. Please mute
Indira's
your mics.
mic is
Ram, your voice is a bit faint. So if you could maybe use headphones.
No, I think I'll manage. Let's see. I'll improvise upon it.
Okay, yeah.
It's quite audible.
Okay. Now, friends, what I said in English, मैं उसको हिंदी में कह रहा हूँ कि पहले तो ये विषय बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है और इसमें जो एक तरफ रखा गया है भारतीय लोकतंत्र और दूसरी तरफ धार्मिक अल्पसंख्यक. The understanding is that the index of democracy should be assessed by the condition of religious minorities in that state. यानी किसी राज्य में अगर आपको देखना है कि वहाँ का लोकतंत्र कितना मजबूत है तो वो इस बात से पता चलता है कि वहाँ की माइनॉरिटीज कितनी सिक्योरिटी, सुरक्षा, इक्विटी, बराबरी से रहती हैं. ये उसका एक मानदंड है. तो उसके हिसाब से मैं अपनी बात को रखना चाहूँगा कि भारत के दो बड़े अल्पसंख्यक, टू बिग माइनॉरिटीज ऑफ इंडिया, मुस्लिम्स एंड क्रिश्चियंस. ऑफ कोर्स मुस्लिम्स का इज वेरी ग्लेयरिंग, बहुत प्रोमिनेंटली दिखता है. क्रिश्चियंस का दिखता नहीं है पर वो भी काफ़ी फैल रहा है. सो बोथ दिस माइनॉरिटीज, Muslims and Christians, have issues related to security, and particularly Muslim community has bigger problems related to equity. I'll just give two examples how things have been vitiated. Let me clarify that this topic is vague. I'll be just covering the first half of it and the second half will be taken up by Irfan. So I'll go spontaneously in tracing how things have evolved over a period of time, what is the historical background, and then whatever is the remaining more contemporary things probably Irfan will have to handle. तो मैं थोड़ा ऐतिहासिक पृष्ठभूमि उसकी समझ पर जाऊंगा और उसके आगे का विषय इरफान लेकर आगे चलेंगे। तो जहाँ तक दो मैं उदाहरण से चालू करना चाहूँगा। अभी आपने देखा होगा कि एक तरफ तो दिल्ली में वायलेंस हुआ और अभी तक ऐसे वायलेंस को हिंदू मुस्लिम वायलेंस कहा जाता था। So far the violence was called Hindu-Muslim violence, but my humble submission is that it is not Hindu-Muslim violence, it is anti-Muslim violence. ये निश्चित तौर से एक मुस्लिम विरोधी हिंसा है
What? I didn't get it.
और
He's
मुस्लिम
talking
के
about
खिलाफ
violence,
जिस
but I can't
से
catch
प्रचार हुआ
what
है,
he's saying. Thought पे then I lost it. बीच बीच में मैं नहीं सुन रही हूँ, बीच बीच में सुन रही हूँ.
so जैसे एक मैं उदाहरण
Default option of muting everyone and unmute only Ram.
Please mute Indra Madam.
That's a good idea. दोस्तों मैं आगे चलता हूँ, समय वैसे भी कम है, टॉपिक बहुत बड़ा है, तो मैं उदाहरण देना चाहता हूँ कि दिस वायलेंस जो हिंसा होती है ऐसा कई बार लगता है कि ये स्पॉन्टेनियस है, स्पॉन्टेनियस यानी स्वतःस्फूर्त. इट इज प्रेजेंटेड एज इफ द वायलेंस इज स्पॉन्टेनियस. ऐसा बताया जाता है कि यह स्वतःस्फूर्त हिंसा है, पर जो भी स्कॉलर्स की स्टडी है, इंक्लूडिंग द पायोनियर इन दिस एरिया डॉक्टर असगर अली इंजीनियर and the latest study coming from Yale University, they tell us that this violence is not spontaneous, it is orchestrated. ये हिंसा स्वतःस्फूर्त नहीं होती, ये करवाई जाती है. पॉपुलर लेवल पे मैं लोगों से पूछता हूँ ये हिंसा होती है या करवाई जाती है, तो अभी लोग भी कहने लग गए हैं कि हिंसा करवाई जाती है. द वायलेंस इज ऑर्केस्ट्रेटेड. अब ये वायलेंस क्यों करवाया जा सकता है? ये वायलेंस करवाया जा सकता है क्योंकि इन कम्युनिटीज के खिलाफ समाज में एक नफरत का माहौल, देयर इज एटमॉस्फियर ऑफ हेट्रेड अगेंस्ट दीज पर्टिकुलर कम्युनिटीज. इनके खिलाफ नफरत का माहौल है. और ये नफरत का माहौल क्यों कैसे बनाया गया? ये नफरत का माहौल ऑटोमेटिक नहीं है. प्लीज नोट दिस पॉइंट कि एक कम्युनिटी दूसरी कम्युनिटी के खिलाफ नफरत का जो माहौल है वो कंस्ट्रक्ट किया गया है, बनाया गया है सांप्रदायिक ताकतों द्वारा. Communal forces have constructed this hatred against the religious minorities. और किस आधार पे बनाया गया है? ये जिस आधार पे बनाया गया है उसको मैं एक शब्द से समझता हूँ, सोशल कॉमन सेंस, सामान्य सामाजिक सोच. कुछ चीजें हैं सामान्य सामाजिक सोच की जो इतिहास से जुड़ी हैं, जो कुछ आज की बातें हैं, उनको लेकर समाज में एक प्रोपेगेंडा किया जाता है, सिस्टमैटिक तरीके से फैलाया जाता है, तो वो कम्युनिटीज के खिलाफ समाज में नफरत का माहौल खड़ा हो जाता है. खैर, अभी दो छोटे उदाहरण आपको दे दूं. अभी कोविड का, जैसे नेहा ने शुरू में बताया, वी आर अंडरगोइंग थ्रू वेरी डिफिकल्ट टाइम्स ऑफ कोविड-19. और ये कोविड-19 में भी किसी आज कम्युनल फोर्सेस इतनी स्ट्रांग हैं कि वो कोई भी मौका नहीं छोड़ती अल्पसंख्यकों के खिलाफ नफरत को गहरा करने में. अभी देखिए उदाहरण, कोविड-19 फैला, चाइना से शुरू हुआ, केरल में पहले आया, उसके बाद कनिका कपूर आई, उसके बाद एक सिख प्रचारक आए, और उसके बाद दुनिया के बादशाह डोनाल्ड ट्रंप आए नमस्ते ट्रंप में पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए. सब लोग आए पर किसी पे ब्लेम नहीं डाला गया. ब्लेम डाला गया तबलीगी जमात पर जो 13 से 15 मार्च तक दिल्ली में मिले. उसके पहले ऑलरेडी जगह जगह तक हो सके. So already there were many people who came who might have brought this virus, one doesn't know, but the blame was exclusively put on Tablighi Jamaat. So this is one example. Similarly, if you see, of course, I don't want to balance it out, but recently there is a news that in Orissa there was a brutal murder of a 14-year-old Christian boy by the similar type of element. तो ये दोनों कम्युनिटीज हैं जिनके बारे में मैं समझना चाहूँगा. आई विल ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड हाउ वायलेंस, हेट्रेड has been manufactured. Of course, I will not go into this particular point that Indian culture is basically a syncretic culture. It is a mixed culture. To separate out one from the other is very difficult. भारत की सभ्यता, संस्कृति, साहित्य, कला, धार्मिक परंपराएं, इनमें इतना मेल जोल है कि इसको अलग करना मुश्किल है. इसमें एक छोटा सा आपको मैं मजे का उदाहरण दे दूं, जस्ट एट ए लाइटर नोट. अभी आपने देखा होगा कि अभी कोरोना के पहले एक ना एक समस्या खड़ी होती रहती है. बीच में उत्तर भारत के बहुत सारे शहरों के नाम बदले गए या बदलने की योजना है. उसमें से दो आपको याद होंगे, एक इलाहाबाद का प्रयागराज हो गया, मुगल सराय का पंडित दीनदयाल उपाध्याय हो गया, और फिर फैजाबाद का अयोध्या हो गया. तो एक पत्रकार, वन जर्नलिस्ट went to Professor Irfan Habib, asked, sir, what is this happening? Why are they changing the names of our cities? So Professor Habib tells us that they want to remove the Muslim Islamic influence on Indian culture. Then very painfully and also humorously says that this culture is so intermixed that it should be difficult to do. But in case they are serious about it, they should begin with changing the name of one person who's, I think, number 2 in the powerful list. I hope you have guessed the name, Mr. Amit Shah. Shah word again is from Persian origin, Badshah, Shahenshah, etc., etc. Anyway, my point is that Indian culture, syncretic, mixed, celebrating each other, as Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in his book Discovery of India tells us, that it is basically a celebratory culture, which is not just a question of tolerance. It is not just a ये केवल एक दूसरे को टॉलरेट करने का सवाल नहीं है, एक दूसरे को स्वीकार करके सेलिब्रेट करने का है. तो उसमें ये जो नफरत की भावनाएं आई, नफरत की भावनाएं पहले मुसलमानों के खिलाफ आई और 1980 के दशक के बाद क्रिश्चियंस के खिलाफ आई. So these begin during freedom movement, as communal politics developed, as British introduced communal historiography to fulfill their goal of divide and rule policy. From that way onwards, the hatred amongst Hindus against Muslims, amongst Muslims against Hindu, this begins with the rise of a reaction to Indian nationalism. Indian nationalism comes up in a plural, diverse way, and its reaction comes up in the form of Hindu communalism and Muslim communalism. They are fed on the diet of Muslims as the they are fed on the diet of kings as the representative of their religions. So this is a starting point. James Mill's periodization of history, Hindu period, Muslim period and British period is one example of that. तो इसकी शुरुआत होती है अंग्रेजों के युग में, जब अंग्रेज या फूट डालो और राज करो की नीति को अलग आगे ले जाना चाहते हैं, तो राजाओं को सत्ता और संपत्ति से नहीं जोड़ते, वो राजाओं को जोड़ते हैं उनके धर्म से, और यहीं से चुन चुन कर कुछ बातों को लिया जाता है. जैसे अभी मैं केवल मुसलमानों पे फोकस करूंगा, हिंदुओं के बारे में जो बात है, जैसे पाकिस्तान में चलता है कि यहाँ के राजा यहाँ तो मुसलमानों का शासन था. ये भी गलत बात है, मुसलमानों का शासन कभी नहीं था. मुसलमान राजाओं का शासन था और वो भी इस्लाम के आधार पे नहीं था. मुसलमान राजाओं के शासन में भी हिंदू अधिकारी महत्वपूर्ण पदों पर थे. तो इट वाज नॉट ए मुस्लिम रूल, इट वाज ए रूल ऑफ फ्यू मुस्लिम किंग्स in collaboration with top Hindu officers. So that's how it begins. And then two major things come up. One is the destruction of temples, which I'll be talking about my own work also. We have dealt with extensively that मंदिर तोड़े गए पर धर्म के लिए नहीं. Temples were destroyed not for religion. Primarily they were destroyed for wealth and for sake of power. तो मंदिरों को तोड़ा गया सत्ता के लिए, संपत्ति के लिए, और उसको जो रंग दिया गया, वो रंग दिया गया कि ये मुसलमान हिंदुओं के खिलाफ हैं. जैसे एक मैं उदाहरण हर जगह देता हूँ, औरंगजेब. अब औरंगजेब में और मजे की बात देख लीजिए. जस्ट सी ए ह्यूमरस पॉइंट इन औरंगजेब. When you go here, average people will tell you that the worst king most anti-Hindu, cruel king to rule this part of the world was Aurangzeb. In Pakistan, the idea is just the contrary opposite. He is regarded as the best, most religious, and most honest to have ruled this part of the world. But of course, this is how same Aurangzeb at one point destroys the temple in Kashi, Vishwanath temple. ये औरंगजेब काशी विश्वनाथ में एक मंदिर तोड़वाते हैं। कारण मैं यहाँ डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा। डॉक्टर पट्टा भी सीतारामैया की किताब, जिसको असगर साहब ने कोट किया है, मैंने भी जिससे सीखा है, उसमें उसके कारण दिए। आई विल नॉट गो इनटू दैट। बट same Aurangzeb, on that Aurangzeb, there is another book called Farmans of King Aurangzeb, which our center had published. A small booklet, and also its enlarged version was published by Raj Kamal Publications. इसमें औरंगजेब ने उत्तर भारत के मंदिरों को जो दान दिए थे, the donations which Aurangzeb gave to the North Indian temples and temples at other places are described, and their original orders are given. I hope we are able to bring it out again. Now, my memory is not that good, but I can tell you, Aurangzeb gave donation to hundreds of temples. 3 of them I'll tell you. Kamakhya Devi temple in Guwahati, Mahakal temple in Ujjain, and Lord Krishna temple in Vrindavan. So these are some of the things. Same king does this, same king does that. And same, please note also that एक हिंदू राजा ने, जो कल्हण की एक महान किताब है राजतरंगिणी, हिंदू राजा हर्षदेव ने अपने राज्य के दौरान एक नए ऑफिसर की नियुक्ति कराई। उसका टाइटल था देवोत्पतन नायक। ए हिंदू ऑफ किंग appoints an officer called Devotpatan Nayak, whose job is to go and bring the idols made of gold and silver, studded with diamonds and rubies. So this is basically what temple destruction goes, and the culmination of this we saw when the Ram temple movement began. Ram temple movement began. Again, there is a long story about that. I will not go into that, but this Ram temple movement further deepened the hatred against Muslims. Now see here the dog whistle phenomenon. Some Muslim king is supposed to have broken the temple, and today's Muslims are supposed to be responsible for that. तो इसमें इतिहास में अगर मुसलमान राजाओं ने कोई अत्याचार किया है, कोई अपराध तो किया है, तो क्या आज का मुसलमान उसके लिए जिम्मेदार है? पर 1980 के बाद से जो हिंसा हुई, उसमें यहाँ के मुसलमानों को सबसे ज्यादा टारगेट किया गया। तो ये एक बात हुई। दूसरी बात कही गई, ये इस्लाम बड़ा आतंकी धर्म है, ये दिस इज एग्रेसिव रिलीजन, it's a violent religion. Actually your religion is supposed to bring, which was meant to bring peace, उसको आज कितना सक्सेसफुली, सफलता से एक हिंसा का धर्म बताने में कई ताकतें सक्सेसफुल हो गई हैं। अब पहले बताइए, कहा जाता है राजा यहाँ आए, Muslim king came here on the horsebacks. Obviously Pushpak Viman was not available to them. They came on the horseback. On one hand there is Quran, on the other hand there is a sword. They threaten the people with sword that you accept Quran, otherwise we'll kill you. मुसलमान राजा आए, घोड़े पर बैठकर आए, उनके एक हाथ में तलवार, एक हाथ में कुरान, और समझ है कि उन्होंने कहा कि आप ये तो इस्लाम को कुरान को स्वीकार करो, नहीं तो आपके सिर को शरीर से अलग किया जाएगा। अब मजे की बात यह है, कोई सोचता नहीं, अगर मुसलमान राजा घोड़े पर आता है, उसके एक हाथ में तलवार है, एक हाथ में कुरान है, तो घोड़े की लगाम कौन संभालेगा? But this formula is very, very popular. And I want to tell you, kings do not spread religion. धर्म राजाओं द्वारा नहीं फैलाए जाते। राजा लोग सत्ता फैलाते हैं संपत्ति के लिए और सत्ता के लिए। Of course, हर एक चीज का एक अपवाद होता है, और इसका एक अपवाद है भारत का एक राजा जिसने अपने धर्म को शांति प्रिय तरीके से, खास तौर से दक्षिण पूर्वी एशिया में बढ़ाया, सम्राट अशोक। कौन सा धर्म फैलाया? बुद्ध धर्म। तलवार की नोक पर या प्यार के आधार पर? प्यार के आधार पर। तो ये तरीका है। तो भारत में भी सबसे पहली जो मस्जिद बनी हुई है, याद रखिए दोस्तों, और ये शायद दुनिया की पुरानी मस्जिदों में से एक है, उसका नाम है चेरामन जुमा मॉस्क। चेरामन जुमा मॉस्क, जो मलाबार के तट पर, इट इज बेस्ड इन केरला इन मलाबार कोस्ट, एंड इट वाज बिल्ट in the 8th, 7th, 8th century, when Arab traders were coming. They not only brought the goods, they also brought their religion, and it is the interaction which was instrumental in bringing Islam. And then Swami Vivekananda, in his 1979 Collected Works, Volume 3, points out, it is wrong to say that Islam spread on the strength of the sword. The victims of the caste of Varna atrocities embraced Islam to escape this tyranny of Varna and caste. This is what Swamiji teaches us. So this is how, but today, the whole idea is that Aurangzeb spread Islam and all that. Recently, I was in correspondence with one of the great historians of medieval India, Harvansh Mukhia ji. Harvansh Mukhia clearly tells us, I'm going to post it shortly on the Facebook, and he tells us how Aurangzeb had no interest in spreading Islam. His main interest was expanding the empire as much as possible. तो औरंगजेब का भी जो मेन इंटरेस्ट था वो अपने राज्य को बढ़ाने में था। और आपको याद होगा, जिसको सबसे खराब, खतरनाक, खूंखार, हिंदू विरोधी राजा कहते हैं, the same king expanded the Mughal empire the maximum. Anyway, so these are the two central points around which hatred started being built up. ये दो वो केंद्रीय पॉइंट हैं जिनमें से नफरत को पैदा करना चालू किया गया। पर बात हकीकत क्या थी? हकीकत ये थी जो महात्मा गांधी अपनी किताब हिंद स्वराज में बताते हैं। The truth is actually I learned from Mahatma Gandhi, his book Hind Swaraj, and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, his book Discovery of India, based on which one of the brilliant series which is not much seen but is worth seeing by all of us for many times is Bharat Ek Khoj. Now what does Gandhiji teach us? Gandhiji tells us that Muslim kings ruled here, Hindus were their subject, Muslims were the subject, and Hindus were also their associates in the rulership. Same way, the other way around. Now, this example I must tell you, and this is very simple. All of us know it. All of us know it. Like Akbar, Navratnas. No, Akbar's Navratnas. Akbar के नौ रत्नों में जहाँ एक तरफ कुछ रहीम खाना और दूसरे मुसलमान थे, उन्हीं नौ रत्नों में बीरबल और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण राजा टोडरमल भी थे। जिस औरंगजेब को इतना खराब, खतरनाक, खूंखार कहा जाता है, the Aurangzeb who is regarded so anti-Hindu, please note, in Aurangzeb's court, 34% of officers, they were Hindus, and the two top such officers was one Raja Mirza Raja Jai Singh, and second Raja Jaswant Singh, who were placed in a very top position in the Mughal administration. Similarly, let's look at one of the most popular kings of Maharashtra, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. अब छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज को मुस्लिम विरोधी कहा जाता है। ये भुला दिया जाता है कि छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज को और अफजल खान की लड़ाई में शिवाजी महाराज को जिसने सलाह दी थी वाघनख ले जाने की, उसका नाम था रुस्तमे जमान। और शिवाजी महाराज ने जब अफजल खान को मारा तो अफजल खान की तरफ से शिवाजी पे जो अटैक करने आया उसका नाम था कृष्णाजी भास्कर कुलकर्णी। तो ये जो पावर था उसको हिंदू मुसलमान के बीच में बांट दिया गया। आई विल लाइक टू टेल वन वेरी डिफरेंट प्रपोजिशन कि भारत में आज जो इतिहास पॉपुलर है, the history which is popular in India demonizes Muslims. It tries to show the binary between Hindus versus Muslims. But please note, what does Dr. Ambedkar says? Dr. Ambedkar says India's history is primarily a history of struggle between Buddhism and Brahminism. This is of course a further topic which we can take up something else. So two notions of history, one Hindu versus Muslims, another Brahminism versus Buddhism. So similarly, if you see now, whenever BJP is coming to power, this one interesting example last I'll give. Whenever BJP comes to power, of course, obviously, one of the things that they do is changing the textbook. In Rajasthan, when BJP was in power, it did a very interesting change in the history book, and that was related to the battle between Akbar and Rana Pratap, Haldi Ghati. Very funny that they tried to say that in the Haldi Ghati battle, Akbar lost the battle, Rana Pratap won the battle. Anyway, at one point, I have no problem. ये बताने की कोशिश की गई कि अकबर हार गए, राणा प्रताप जीत गए, मुझे इससे कोई समस्या नहीं है। मुझे समस्या इस बात से है कि इस लड़ाई को हिंदू वर्सेस मुसलमान की लड़ाई बताया गया, और ये लड़ाई हिंदू वर्सेस मुसलमान की नहीं थी, क्योंकि इस लड़ाई में अकबर की सेना का नेतृत्व अकबर नहीं कर रहे थे, अकबर नहीं आए थे, पता नहीं क्यों नहीं आए, ये मैंने रिसर्च नहीं किया। अकबर की जगह जो आए थे उनका नाम था राजा मान सिंह, जो अकबर के प्रधान सेनापति थे। तो अकबर्स आर्मी वाज बीइंग लेड बाय राजा मान सिंह, हु वाज अ कमांडर इन चीफ, and Rana Pratap was being assisted by one of the big generals whose name was Hakim Khan Sur, a Muslim general very loyal to Rana Pratap. So this was again a battle, again for power. And please note, Akbar and Rana Pratap fought, but their inheritors, Jahangir and Amar Singh, they struck a compromise and became allies again. So this is one part of the thing. But starting from here, a demonization of Muslims, and on that lot of other things got added, which I will not have time to add, like Muslims family, their personal law, and then lately, of course, the latest one being the global terrorism, the roots of which lie in the politics of oil. All this combined together, the Muslim as a villain picture got completed, and that is the foundation of the violence. Now I'll talk a bit about Christians also, because when first on 23rd January night, 22nd 23rd January night 1999, जब 22 जनवरी 23 जनवरी की रात को पेस्टर ग्राहम स्टेवर्ट स्टेन्स को उनके 2 मासूम बच्चों के साथ जला दिया, तो उस समय मैं सोचा ये क्रिश्चियंस को क्यों वायलेंस कर रहे हैं। तो चारों तरफ सुनाई आया कि भाई ये क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज कन्वर्शन कर रहे भारत को सन 2000 तक ये यहाँ 100 करोड़ क्रिश्चियंस को खड़ा करेंगे। When I went into, मैं जब इसके गहराई में गया तो पहली बात मुझे पता चली कि क्रिश्चियनिटी भारत के सबसे पुराने धर्मों में है। AD 52 it came with Saint Thomas in India. It came nearly 1950 years ago. करीब 1950 साल पहले आया, और आज क्रिश्चियंस की जनसंख्या कितनी है? According to 2011 census, it is 2.3%. 1900 years of work by Christian missionaries, and what is the percentage of Christians? 2.3. Then I was talking of Pastor Graham Stearns. Pastor Graham Stearns की मैं बात कर रहा था। उनके मृत्यु के बाद बहुत बड़ा दुनिया में हलचल मच गई और एक कमेटी बनाई गई। उस समय लाल कृष्ण आडवाणी जी होम मिनिस्टर थे, उन्होंने वाधवा कमीशन बनाया। वाधवा कमीशन ने 2 महत्वपूर्ण बातें कही। पहली बात कही कि पेस्टर स्टेन्स की हत्या दारा सिंह, राजेंद्र सिंह पाल उर्फ दारा सिंह ने की, जो बजरंग दल का सदस्य है, जो बजरंग दल RSS से जुड़ा है। पॉइंट नंबर 1। पॉइंट नंबर 2, जिस एरिया में पेस्टर स्टेन्स काम कर रहे हैं, केओंझर, मनोहरपुर, ओडिशा, वहाँ ईसाइयों की संख्या में कोई वृद्धि, there is no statistical increase in the percentage of Christian population in the area where Pastor Stearns was working. So this is one. And then Kandhamal, 2008, a big tragedy where hundreds of churches were demolished, hundreds of Christians got killed on the pretext that they have killed Swami Lakshmananand. Maoists were claiming that we have killed Swami Lakshmananand. माओवादी कह रहे थे स्वामी लक्ष्मणानंद की हत्या हमने की है, पर इन्होंने कहा नहीं, ये तो क्रिश्चियन से मिले जुले हैं, और उसके नाम पे क्रिश्चियंस के खिलाफ हिंसा हुई। तो जैसे मुसलमानों के खिलाफ जो हिंसा हुई बड़े बड़े रूप में हुई, गुजरात है, बंबई के दंगे हैं, मुजफ्फरनगर के दंगे हैं, क्रिश्चियंस के खिलाफ हिंसा में बिखरी हुई हिंसा, scattered isolated violence in different parts of the country, और ज्यादातर ईसाइयों के खिलाफ जो हिंसा हुई है वो आदिवासी एरियाज में हुई है। आप डांग, जहां मेरे दोस्त इरफान काम करते थे, डांग से लेकर अगर आप उड़ीसा तक जाओ तो पूरा एक जो लंबा बेल्ट है, आदिवासी बेल्ट, यहाँ 1980 के बाद से वनवासी कल्याण आश्रम, जो आरएसएस का सहयोगी, मतलब आरएसएस का बेटा बेटी जो भी है वो 1980 के बाद से सक्रिय हुआ। और कई स्वामी लोग उस एरिया में गए। डांग के एरिया में स्वामी असीमानंद गए, जो बाद में वो बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट के कारण जेल में गए थे। झाबुआ मध्य प्रदेश में आसाराम बापू के फॉलोअर्स गए, और इधर उड़ीसा में स्वामी लक्ष्मणानंद गए। इन्होंने जाकर वहाँ जिस प्रकार का प्रचार किया, जिस प्रकार की नफरत फैलाई, उसकी परिणति क्रिश्चियन विरोधी वायलेंस में हुई। और मैं पर्सनल एक एक्सपीरियंस बता दूं, कंधमाल की हिंसा के बाद ये सामान्य सामाजिक सोच कितना गहरा होता है, इसको निरस्त करना कितना मुश्किल होता है, ये मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूँ। मैं कंधमाल गया, भुवनेश्वर से जाना पड़ता है। जहाँ कंधमाल में जाकर मैं आदिवासियों की दशा देख रहा था, क्रिश्चियंस की दशा देख रहा था, when I was seeing that on the streets of Bhubaneswar, average people were saying it is good that they have been taught a lesson. They are against our Hindu religion. They are trying to increase their bride number. So it is good that they have been taught a lesson in this particular form. So friends, minorities today, roughly, which I think I'll leave it to Irfan to elaborate. Muslim minorities mainly face three problems. Problem number one, insecurity. There are many studies telling us that 14.2% Muslims and those getting killed in the communal violence are about 80%. Dr. Vibhuti Narayan Rai's research and other research, our own center's research will show this. Number one, insecurity. Number second one is equity. अब आजादी के बाद जो भी मामला हुआ, पार्टीशन लंबा चैप्टर है, पर पार्टीशन का दोष मुसलमानों के सिर पर डाल दिया गया, ये भुलाकर कि आजादी के आंदोलन में मुसलमानों ने भी उतना ही हिस्सा लिया था, forgetting that Muslims were equal part of the freedom movement and that British partition was a British ploy with the help of Muslim communalism, Hindu communalism. तो मुसलमानों के ऊपर वो दोषारोपण कर दिया गया कि इनके कारण पार्टीशन हुआ, और वहां से इनसिक्योरिटी और बढ़ गई। और तीसरा इसके कारण जो आता है वो सवाल आता है इक्विटी, मतलब बराबरी आपको नहीं मिल रही है, जो सच्चर कमेटी ने बताई है। और तीसरी बात जो आ गई वो आइडेंटिटी। ये दोनों चीजें जब कमजोर हो जाती हैं तो आइडेंटिटी ज्यादा मजबूत हो जाती है। आइडेंटिटी बिकम्स स्ट्रॉन्गर व्हेन इनसिक्योरिटी एंड इक्विटी दे टेक ए डाइव इनटू द डीप। जब ये सुरक्षा और बराबरी गिर जाती है तो पहचान के मुद्दों को ज्यादा महत्व मिलता है। और इसलिए मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी का एक दोषी कहना पड़ेगा कि ऐसे भावनात्मक मुद्दों के पीछे जो खड़े किए जाते हैं, शाहबानो का केस, बाबरी मस्जिद का केस, उसके पीछे वो भी भागने लगते हैं, और ये एक बड़ा सवाल है। तो आज हमारे जो चैलेंजेस हैं, चैलेंजेस ये हैं कि उनकी डेमोक्रेटिक राइट्स को कैसे लाना। हालात बहुत खराब हैं, things are very bad, they are I think they are very depressing times, but restoring their democratic rights as equal citizen, which our constitution tells us is a big challenge, and to overcome, to face this challenge, इसका मुकाबला करने के लिए हमें बहुत सारे तरीकों को सोचना पड़ेगा। और मैं डिस्कशन के दौरान इससे उभरे हुए सवालों को और दूसरे सवालों को भी इरफान के साथ, आपके साथ शेयर करूंगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच। थैंक यू वेरी मच। ओवर टू इरफान।
Irfan, sir, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can begin your talk.
Thank you, Neha, and thank you, Ram, for such a brilliant exposition on the issue. I will try to give a framework as to why it is happening, where is Indian democracy in this, and I deal with two parts. One is the constitution and the reality, how the constitution bureaucracy and politicians are implementing that constitution, and what is the way ahead. As Ram rightly pointed out, the issue of minorities is not just of minorities. It is always issue of democracy. How deep is democracy? And if democracy is deep, issue of minority should ideally wither away or not be there, or should be in very marginal proportion. If we think that issue of minorities is for minorities to deal, let me recollect here that the First World War was caused when Archduke Franz Ferdinand was murdered by a Serbian nationalist who was minority in Sarajevo. And that triggered off, of course, that was not the only cause, but that did trigger off the First World War. Likewise, one of the important questions in Second World War was the question of Jews, minorities, how Hitler dealt with minorities. And India was also partitioned on the issue of minorities. If power sharing formula had been reached and minorities had been given their due, then maybe partition, if that minority question had been settled to the satisfaction of both, then maybe India would not have been partitioned if there was no minority question. This is, I'm putting it a little bit simplistically. There are deeper causes of partition, but as we are dealing with minority issue, I'm referring only to that. Now, definition of minority. What do we, definition of minorities. Now, what do we consider minorities? How do we define minorities? A minority is a group of citizens of a country for individuals having common culture, language, religion, race, ethnicity, customary practices, or traditions that are different from others. And the desire to preserve their traditions, their culture, language.
Your voice is echoing. Can you just sit maybe at one place, because there's a lot of movement and your voice is echoing. So can you hear us? Hello? Very faint. You'll have to sit, and your video is hung. So if you could just sit in coverage. Your voice is breaking. Yeah, but faint. Maybe you can switch off your video for a while and speak. Maybe it will be clearer. No, you're very faint. Hello?
तिला बोलायला सांगतो
ते बंद कर. Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Sorry for all this mess slightly. Yeah, let me read the definition once again. A minority is a group of citizens of a country having common culture, language, religion, race, ethnicity, customary practices or traditions that are different from others, and they desire to preserve their culture, language, religion, their bloodline, customs and traditions, and transmit it to the future generations. And further, they are less numerically and lack the means to preserve their culture owing to their relative powerlessness or non-dominant subaltern position. So here they have a distinct culture of their own, or religion or language or whatever, which is different from others. They are less in number, and owing to their numerical uh, uh, inferiority, they are also powerless to defend their culture, to pass it on to future generation, uh, uh, and therefore such groups are called minorities. Parsis are less in number, but they are not so powerless to defend their culture or to pass it on. Likewise, Jains in India are not that powerless to and don't feel that they can't pass on their culture, transmit their culture to future generation or to defend. In fact, during Paryushan, their festivals, we see a 12-day ban on all vegetarian, on all slaughterhouses and sale of meat and etc. etc. So I strictly according to this definition, we cannot count them Jains and Parsis as minorities. But if you take only religiously inferior status, then of course they do fall into the minorities. Minorities in India are, according to the constitution, based on religion and language. There are two criteria. So either there are linguistic minorities or there are religious minorities. We today will talk only of religious minorities because I think the linguistic minorities are not so disadvantaged in India, and there haven't been, except in Tamil Nadu, we had anti-Hindi struggle, domination of Hindi, etc. But today we would talk here in India mostly of religious minorities. So according to National Commission of Minorities in India, the minorities in India, the religious minorities in India include Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, and Parsis. Now, actually, if you see that most minorities are a constructed community. Muslims, for example, they were constructed, this community feeling was constructed in late 19th century and from early 20th century. Before the Britishers came, there wasn't that community feeling of Muslim. There were Ashraf Muslims, there were Ajlaf Muslims. Ashraf Muslims did not identify with Ajlaf Muslims, so on and so forth. They speak various variety of languages, follow variety of cultures, traditions, customs. They have a varied history. As Ram pointed out, that in Kerala, Islam came through a different route. In North India, Islam came through a different mechanism. It was more through invasion and aggression, etc., etc. So there, they didn't even share history. The only thing they shared was way of worship and the scriptures. But it is, I'll not go into details of how these communities were constructed slowly over period of time. The subaltern historians have done a great work on how particularly the Hindu community as well as Muslim community were constructed, supported by British colonial state. Otherwise, they are varied in their culture and there is hardly any community feeling. In India, one's identity during, before late 18th century was more along the lines of caste and regional identities rather than religious communities. So these religious communities are constructed. Hindu as well as Muslim community are a constructed community. Now, every religious community is internally very diverse culturally. Christian community is very diverse. Muslim community is very diverse linguistically, traditions, customs, etc. Now, the communities were constructed in the late 19th century and 20th century by the elites of the community when they argued, when they advocated for certain religious rights, certain on the basis of traditions and customs, certain communal rights. So elite of the community supported by British colonial state constructed these communities, and now these constructs have been deepened. So we must keep that in mind, that religious communities are a construct and we can deconstruct and we must deconstruct. One of the way to peace is deconstructing these communities and having more fellow feelings with neighborhoods, neighborhood communities, regional communities, having multiple identities. But I'll not go more into this now. Now, what were the tools of constructing this community? One was these communities were constructed around sacred symbols. Ram Mandir, for example, becomes a sacred symbol. Or inviolability of Muslim personal law. Sharia, ये अल्लाह का कानून है, इसमें हम दखल अंदाजी नहीं करने देंगे, जान पर खेल जाएंगे, वगैरह वगैरह. You know, these kind of slogans. For Muslims, the sacred symbols were Urdu as a lingua franca of the community, Muslim defense of Muslim personal law, and not letting state interfere into Sharia. Aligarh Muslim Unity, Aligarh Muslim University and its minority character was one such emotional issues around which communities were, the Muslim community was mobilized. And I would say the diverse communities following Islam were slowly mobilized to convert them into Muslim, one overarching Muslim community. This community feeling is less in South and more in North. We can do various studies on this. And it is important, unless we understand these realities of life, we won't be able to really have a solution. So sacred symbols, likewise, Hindu community was constructed around what Savarkar said, Punya Bhumi and Pitru Bhumi, holy land and fatherland. Those whose holy land and fatherland are within this landmass from River Indus to Arabian Sea are one community. And then they found cow as a sacred symbol and many other symbols that we see in history. The second thing for constructing communities are history is deployed to construct a past which is ideal, golden age, which was threatened by the adversarial community. There were heroes, it was a heroic fight, and there were heroes. So you name a lot of heroes. Ram Janmabhoomi struggle was projected into, not only a post 20th century, the second half of 20th century, but it was projected as if the struggle was going on for centuries. And so sacred symbols, imagined history, along with heroes. Revenge of the past is one such, when you construct a history and present your community as a victimized community, then you make a case for taking revenge of the past today. And that is what we see. Then demonization of the other community. Christians are converting in large numbers. They will overtake the Hindu population. Muslim demography is increasing rapidly. These are some of the issues on which demonization is taking place. Muslims are terrorists. They are loyal to Pakistan. And we know many such demonization. For lack of time, I'm not calling all the demonization. Then instill the fear. The fifth tool for constructing community is instill fear of the other community within one's own community. Muslim population will overtake you, Christian population will overtake you. They will rape your women, they will abduct your women, they love jihad, etc., etc. You know, these are the issues. I'm not going to counter these issues, just pointing out that how you create fear of the other community in order to construct your own community. Then you call for violence against the adversary community, which in turn deepens the fear of the other community. And once it deepens your fear of the other community, post-violence, we see every communal riots, there is violence, and the communal identity gets further deepened because you have fear of the other community. You're afraid of people belonging to other community, and you internalize these prejudices or this demonization of other community more easily along with violence than you would do without that violence. Then the seventh tool is instill excessive pride in one's own religio-cultural symbols that make its sole reason the être of existence, which enables members of the community to be less concerned about other existential issues like that of lack of education or lack of livelihood, accessible to public health system. We saw in COVID that, you know, Jamaat is spreading and Muslims are spreading COVID is more important than seeing that, you know, there's the public health system in India has collapsed. You are not worried about inflation. One's own existential vulnerabilities and powerlessness become non-issues. Once you instill pride of your own culture and religio-cultural symbols. Now, I would like to point out that there are two visions of public order, peace, and social stability. One, of course, as Ram pointed out, democracy. A social contract which is accepted overwhelmingly by entire people, all the citizens of the country, or overwhelming majority of citizens of the country, and rule of law, predominance of humanitarian values, inclusive approach towards all communities, accountable government, and institutional architecture to realize these values. We can call this not just democracy, but participatory democracy that ensures freedom, equality, social justice, and human dignity. This is one vision of public order, stability, and peace. But those who construct identities and want to construct hegemony of one community over other community have another vision of public order, peace, and social stability. What they argue is that where there'll be public order, peace, and social stability when one community seeks to become all powerful, monopolize political and coercive power of the state, exclude, suppress, and marginalize adversarial community, promising development, peace, and public order and stability. So peace will be established if one culture is imposed over rest of the society. There are many such examples that we can take in history. I'll be referring to some of these examples very briefly. We can call this as aristocratic and totalitarian rule. So aristocratic and totalitarian rule promises that a small aristocratic class, in India we can call upper caste, Brahminical caste as aristocratic class, a small aristocratic class enjoys monopoly over power, and the state is all intrusive and pervasive, entering the bedrooms and kitchens of individuals in order to establish peace and social stability, impose one culture over the others. And along with that, they promise the citizens peace and stability and development. Now, remember, during this Modi government's period, the solicitor, advocate general argued in court that citizens do not even have right over their own bodies that belongs to the nation. You know, so pervasive and intrusive they become. So no right to hold their own opinion, which is contrary to ruling elite and state ideology. So this is their promise. This is their vision of the social order. Now, examples of aristocratic totalitarian rule, there are many. Hitler, of course, was one such order. He wanted to completely suppress Jews and talked about supremacy of Aryan race. But we have recent ones. Genocide in Rwanda and Bosnia was one similar such example. So what I'm trying to argue is that this minority issue, that Muslims are terrorists or they are Christians spread their religion, demonization of minorities, nothing specific to India alone. It is in every country. Every country there are such elements who try to establish this kind of hegemony over the minorities. They identify a minority. George Floyd, the case of George Floyd is the recent one that we saw. Then persecution and oppression of Arabs in Palestine is another such example of an aristocratic totalitarian rule. South Africa, racial rule was dismantled, but we know there was a racial rule. Now, heightened sense of pride is crucial to a person. Highly submissive and non-thinking follower seeking refuge in strong collective community which demands that aristocratic totalitarian state, unmindful that the state ignores other services which it is bound to provide, like jobs, livelihoods, education, access to public health, uphold human rights, security of all citizens, and that elite are corrupt. So there are individuals who are submissive in their nature, and once the pride is instilled in such citizens, the bucks as we call in India today, once they get inflated with the pride, then they ignore all these kind of questions and they seek a strong collective community that would wipe out or establish complete hegemony over the other communities, mainly the minority communities. And that is how we see. Now let me come to Indian democracy in practice and in constitution. Very briefly, Indian constitution guarantees equality for all, irrespective of religion and freedom of religion. It also guarantees rights of minorities, religious as well as linguistic, to establish and administer their educational institutions so that they can transmit their culture from one generation to another. However, the aristocratic Brahminical groups wielded considerable influence and were a strong pressure group in the Constituent Assembly. So in spite of this democratic Indian constitution, secular Indian constitution, which treated all citizens with equality, which gave rights to minorities to establish and administer educational institutions of their own, the Brahminical group managed to slip in certain provisions in the constitution that are now being used to establish their hegemony as support for them in the constitution to establish their hegemony. These two provisions that I can name are one, Article 44 on Uniform Civil Code, which goes against the spirit of otherwise the constitution, and the anti-cow slaughter provision, Article 48 of the Constitution. The anti-conversion laws in which started from 1967 in Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, and Arunachal Pradesh, and now they are in 7 states. So this also are some of the provisions in Indian law that are contrary to equality freedom of religion and secularism, freedom of all, equal rights to minorities. Now, while Constitution by and large guarantees secularism and equality and minority rights, in practice we see that media and educational institutions are largely controlled by this aristocratic class, that is Brahminical upper caste class, particularly from Hindu community, and therefore hegemony of aristocratic class over the social and cultural discourse is maintained. You know, the notion of nationalism is defined by them, etc., etc. Demonization of Muslims and Christians and social control over lower castes is one result that educational and media are in hands of the small aristocratic class. So they, they spin an ideology, they spin a culture, they spin a notion of nationalism in order to establish the hegemony of the small aristocratic class. Now, bureaucracy is drawn largely from this aristocratic class, Brahminical upper caste, and therefore, through the bureaucracy, they are able to undermine the egalitarian provisions of Indian Constitution. This bureaucracy has internalized hegemonic discourse and attitudes towards backward castes and religious minorities. They saw Muslims as separatists, as against communal, against national integration, because of their Muslim personal law, because they are non-vegetarians, etc., etc. And they saw Muslims and Christians as a threat to Hindus. This was internalized by them, and slowly in practice, they were actually undermining the constitutional order of equality. To them, order, peace and stability and development could be and should be established only through imposition of upper caste values, or in other words, Hindu Rashtra, a version of Hindu Rashtra. So coercive imposition of hegemonic culture, largely drawn from the upper caste culture. Now, they knew that resistance to this idea will come from religious minorities and Dalits. And Dalits were to be dealt with in rural India in everyday life. How Dalits were treated. Dalits and religious minorities were to be treated differently. Religious minorities were to be dealt with episodic pogroms, physical violence, hate crimes, stigmatization, demonization, economically weakening them by discriminating them in jobs and livelihood and in educational institutions, and calling for their social boycott. Professor Ram Punyani gave several examples of how this is happening, and I'll not go into the details. So, whereas Dalits were treated as serfs from whom cheap labor could be squeezed out in rural areas, largely in rural areas, but also to some extent in urban areas, through oppression and violence, to control, to establish control over their body, soul, and mind. Should be in the hands of aristocratic upper castes, and sexual exploitation of Dalit women. So this is how Dalits were to be dealt with in everyday life, whereas minorities were dealt with by episodic violence that we saw, number of violence. Now, violence, when we talk about violence, I see three kinds of violence. One is physical violence. We see mob lynching and communal riots, pogroms and genocide. Till date, more than 12,000 people have been killed in communal, in episodes and incidences of communal violence. 40,000 people have been affected in communal violence, injured, etc. These are the figures of Stephen Wilkinson and our own monitoring, which center does of communal violence. Again, I'm not going into the details, but just giving these figures that we have been doing. And crores of worth of property of minorities has been destroyed. Now, there is structural violence. I'm not going into definition and details because of lack of time. just incidences of structural violence, which is done by discrimination and structures that disempower or marginalize minorities. So one is denial of scheduled caste status to Muslims and Christians through presidential order. They cannot, even though they are similar to their brethren and sisters in Hindu community, they can't enjoy the protection of those provisions. The Citizenship Amendment Act and National Register of Citizenship Citizens, how it was implemented in Assam, is another example of this structural violence, which in everyday life marginalizes minorities. Discrimination in jobs, government contracts, livelihood. Such a committee has given enough data on this, and Amitabh Kundu committee, after such a committee, has once again confirmed that minorities are discriminated in every field, government jobs, educational institutions, bureaucracy, government contracts, loan by banks, etc., etc. Now, all the draconian laws passed by the government, by the parliament, were disproportionately used exclusively on minorities. Minorities and Dalits have been victimized through whether it's TADA, POTA, and now UAPA, which is ongoing. The sedition laws, the way they are used, disproportionate presence in jail of minorities that we see. This report says, although Muslims are 14% although Muslims are 10% in Mumbai jails, they are 27%. And their conviction rates are even lesser, much lesser than the average conviction rates, which shows that innocent members of minority community are arrested. Terrorism and anti-terrorist laws target Muslims. They are being called as terrorists, anti-nationals, and the terrorist attacks that attack Muslims are dealt with kid gloves, and no strict action is taken, whereas terrorist incidents that attack Hindus are called as anti-national crimes, and the state comes down upon heavily, as it should. But also deal with terrorist incidents where Muslims have been targeted. For example, in Parbhani, in Malegaon, Ajmer Dargah Sharif, bomb blasts, etc., etc. I can give many such examples where Muslims have been targeted, but there is no. We see increasing incidents of hate crimes. They are being called as termites, drain on Indian economy, etc., etc. We know all this. Professor Ram Punyani dealt with some of this. Now, in structural violence, I would also include that how during communal riots, there are instances of police inaction and even collusion with the rioters and non-prosecution of rioters. We see the latest Delhi case, we see the large number of victims, disproportionate number of victims were Muslims, and people who are being arrested for riots are also Muslims. The Hindus, Kapil Mishra and Anurag Thakurs are allowed to go scot-free. They are not even touched with barge pole. Then Muslims are victims of riots, and large number of them are arrested for rioting. Socially and economically boycotting Muslim minorities. We are seeing this even under COVID situation. Social media campaigns against minorities is done freely, and there have been many such incidences, and we see increasing number of such trolling and anti-minorities, where state takes absolutely no action in spite of several complaints. Babita Phogat and her post on, or Maneka Gandhi and her social media posts, etc., etc. One can give number of examples. Another example of structural violence is putting up massive billboards in UP with names and photos of Muslim protesters against Citizenship Amendment Act, claiming that they are the ones who damage the property and heavy penalties were recovered from them for damaging public property. Now, the third type of violence, we saw physical violence, structural violence, I would say attitudinal violence. Professor Ram Punyani referred to some of this, erasing symbols and cultural memories and heritage of minorities. To give you some example, renaming streets and towns and railway stations, having cultural linkages with minorities, demolishing of Babri Masjid and construction of Ram Janmabhoomi temple is one such example of attitudinal violence that they ruled over India, etc. Abolishing Hajj subsidy but incurring huge expenditure for Kumbh Mela and many such Hindu religious festivals, constructing Lord Ram's statue in Ayodhya, tallest statue, staging Ram Leela in Ayodhya from teams drawn from all over the world, including Indonesia, Mali, and other countries, at the expense of state treasury. 100 crores were spent in Kurukshetra to reconstruct the culture of Mahabharata. This is another example of attitudinal violence. Giving large grants to deras like Guru Ram Rahim, Sacha Soda Dera, 75 crore rupees were granted to them to promote sports. Why a Hindu dera is being given that large number of state funds? I don't know from where Ramdev, from almost a poverty-stricken person, is now, Baba Ramdev is now owners of crores, thousands of crores worth property, largely because state gave his establishment cheap land, etc., etc., a lot of concessions. That minorities are being relegated to second-class citizens. Politically, they are being made irrelevant. Their voice is being made irrelevant. Today, you don't find any political party referring to any issues of minorities. The latest election in Delhi, we see even Congress did not talk about communal violence and anti-CAA agitation and how it was repressed and how it is being repressed. So minority issues are becoming non-issues because of this attitudinal violence. No political party is touching their issues with barge pole. Even the so-called secular parties are not. So politically, they are being made irrelevant, and in the margins, no political party takes up issues of minority community. Their human rights violations, discriminations, offenses, and against them are ignored. Now, I'll come to the final part, the way ahead. What is the way ahead? I think international human rights mechanisms require three things. How minorities should be, three issues on which minorities should be dealt. One, that physical security should be ensured by the state. All those who have subscribed to international human rights and covenants, international civic and political rights covenants are obliged to ensure physical security of all minorities, non-discrimination of minorities, and third, that minorities should enjoy their culture and social space for transmission of their culture to their future generation through educational institutions. This is generally done through educational institutions. So these are the three principles on which we should seek way ahead for minorities and peace in society. If human rights of minorities are ensured, it ensures peace in society, it ensures deepening of democracy. So it is important for every citizen and not just for minorities. I would go a step further and say, protect rights of conscientious objectors within minority communities, which enables social change from within of minority communities. We want social change. We don't want minorities community to be boxed into some cultural museum. For example, Muslim women are raising issues about their oppression under Muslim personal law. So they are conscientious objectors, and their rights also have to be protected. So not only that of the entire community, but also that of conscientious objectors within minority community. When minority cultural practice are in conflict with constitutional morality, for example, gender justice, then the constitutional morality has to prevail over the minority community's rights. However, space should be given for reforms from within first, and then the state should step in if the minority community does not reform themselves. Awaken individuality of citizenship, restore the personhood. We have to deconstruct these all identities: Hindu identity, Muslim identity, this identity, Sikh identity, or we have to deconstruct all identities. We have to tell people everybody has multiple identities. I'm a Muslim, I'm a Maharashtrian, I'm a Gujarati because my mother tongue is Gujarati, I'm an Indian, I'm a cricket hater, I'm a lawyer. So there are multiple identities that I have. So we have to deconstruct and a single dominant identity, may it be on grounds of religion or language or ethnicity or race, and restore citizenship, personhood on basis of cross-sectional, intersectional, multiple identities. Strengthen constitutional moralities and values. Struggle for participatory governance, like right to citizenship, governance which is more responsive. In that, I would say that our democracy is not enough. We need more democracy. If we struggle for more democracy and more rights of citizens, then the minority question becomes quite marginal, because every citizen starts enjoying rights. Strong, independent and institutions like media, judiciary and autonomy of educational institutions have to be struggled for. So institutional architecture has to be protected, and we have to strengthen this institutional architecture, which in turn will ensure that even if fascists come to power, they are not able to completely dominate, dictate entire agenda to the exclusion of democracy and democratic institutions. We need accountable governance, RTI, bureaucracy that is accountable to law and citizens, and we need citizens complaint mechanisms. Spread of education, more education and secular education spreads, the better. Gender justice and social reforms are another thing that we should be seeking from within the minority communities and from even majority communities, because it's not that majority community has all the gender justice and nothing more has to be done. Democratic culture of equality has to be strengthened. We have to seek cultural past which was democratic, and point out and educate people about our cultural, about our composite culture, shared culture across religious communities. And I think that goes a long way in establishing peaceful coexistence. Finally, I would say that we have to accept that no religion monopolizes truth. No religion has monopoly over truth, and no religion is false religion. No religion is superior, and no religion is inferior. All religions are different. This idea has to be accepted. They are good for all the religion is good for that follower of religion. A person wants to reach God through that religion, he or she must have the freedom to reach God through that religion without having any negative attitude towards other religion. I think I've taken quite a bit of time, and I'll rest my case here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Okay, so thank you, both the speakers. I guess we have around 20 to 25 minutes for some questions and discussions. So there are certain questions raised which are already in the chat section. Do the speakers want me to read it out? They're mostly related to how can we bring different religious communities on the same platform, and mostly again, like Irfan sir already elaborated, how can we establish communal harmony? So that is mostly the questions, the direction of the questions. So either speaker can really address these questions. Hello? Hello?
Please unmute your phone, Ram sir.
Trying, but it is controlled by the.
The host had muted us.
Yeah.
Now
Yes.
it's open.
Can
Yeah,
you
yeah.
hear me? Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah, can.
Suraj has unmuted.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's what I was trying to signal. Hello. I think this is a central question. How do we combat this whole hatred which has been generated against minorities? Because to me, whatever Irfan brilliantly laid out different steps, I think the beginning has to be made in the society. And as my understanding goes like this, that first there is a misconceptions about minorities, creating hatred, leading to violence, and leading to polarization. Polarization is making communal forces strong. Now, basically, it is not just a question of minorities, even the whole growth of Hindutva and demonization of minorities, suppression of Dalits, Adivasis, and women. This is a parallel process. So, I think the first and the major step is that whatever misconceptions have been spread, we have to find mechanisms to counter that. I see what efforts were begun by Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer. I'm talking more at practical level. Those efforts have been very meaningful, but a drop in the ocean. We have to broaden those efforts whereby uh, countering the false narratives, countering the hatred has to be emphasized. And this has to be emphasized, obviously, with this type of webinar and other programs which CSSS has been conducting, along with books, posters, and social media groups. I think we have to generate a lot of social media groups which we have to disseminate. My feeling is that by now we have enough literature, but we are not reaching. See the great efforts of Anand Patwardhan's those 16 episode Reason or Vivek. But in the country of 120 crore people, where is it reaching? So if we want to bring reduce the hatred, this type of a inter-community program. So first is this awareness program. awareness programs have to be supplemented by inter-community programs. Now, inter-community programs, very few of us have experience of that. I always keep talking about joint celebration of festivals, joint celebration of different religious festivals, the social aspects of the festivals to be given more importance. Then the morality of bhakti and Sufi tradition. This is something I feel should be the
बैनर
core around which we try to develop our work. So this is at the level of awareness, this is at the level of popularization, but the next steps which come
4 साढ़े 4 बजे
much
तो
more
गाड़ी
important,
लोडिंग
and that comes in the form that this
इतनी
march
देर
of
से क्यों गाड़ी
Hindutva of
बनाई
politics, it has tried to suppress the social movements. Now, if you see what is happening in Delhi, that those who participate in the democratic movements, the victims are being targeted, and those people who are raising their voice, they are being targeted. So that is the second step, that we have to broaden our solidarity. And I think one of the comments came here that this cannot be a lone battle. And Irfan also, I think, correctly pointed out, this is not a battle which only minorities can undertake. I also feel that minorities' suffering is just a visible suffering, but it hides the broader suffering of different sections of society, in which I count Dalits, Adivasi, women and workers. So it is a broader struggle. I don't know how joint platforms can be evolved, how joint platforms in which we stand in solidarity with each other, we stand for democratic voices, we try to ensure that democratic voices are heard properly, and our basic strength will come in building up platforms around programs. See, so far I feel what is happening, that people are very focused about their organizations, this is my program, this is their program. But I think the time has come where we need to come together around all of us who believe in Indian Constitution's values, all of us who believe in the morality of United Nations Charter of Human Rights, all of us who believe in the basic dignity of human beings. We need to have a programmatic platform, and without that programmatic platform, the isolated voices are not going to be effective. As they say in English, let's hang together, otherwise be ready to be hanged separately. I feel that exactly that time has come when all those standing for democratic values, dignity, human rights, and for the interest of marginalized sections of society, we have to definitely make joint platforms which are needed. So I will say it is a two-level battle. One is at the level of ideology, dissemination of values, dissemination of correct information, formation of different WhatsApp groups. Now social media, it's such a big platform. We condemn it. Why don't we use it for positive uses, positive goal? Now, there are IT cells, there are different cells who are misusing, spreading fake news. So why can't we form a group which focuses on social media intervention? And this social media intervention, all of us can do. Spend some time spreading the correct things, pick up the good articles, like these days, Wire, Scroll, Sabrang, and some of our own writings. They are freely available on the Facebook. So why don't we summarize them and try to disseminate them on the Facebook? So this is ideological level, and second is at the level of programs. Second, social programs and political programs. Political programs, I think, is a culmination of our activity, where the aim has to be a joint platform around these particular common goals. Now, by the way, since I have got the time, I have got this thing. One more question I'll say. I think Amit Pandya raised that there is no political party which will be able to confront this communalism. Partly it looks true. Partly it looks true. But I think what is the bigger thing lacking is a social cohesion of secular democratic forces. If secular democratic forces which are non-electoral, if we can raise a joint voices, I feel political formations will be forced to come together. rather than appealing to them that you come together, which has been our strategy so far, we have to create an atmosphere where our voice is heard by these electoral forces, and they are forced to come together, not because they think so, but they know that the pressure from the ground demands that. So my feeling is that let's think of what we can do, and each of us, because this appeal is that so far some people try to give more time, some people try to give less time, but commitment to these values has to be transformed, has to be translated into our own action, into our own contribution in this direction. That's my feeling, and I'll stop here. Yeah, I am stopping.
Yeah. So there was one more question about narratives that are raised, that do we have alternate narratives? Christy has asked this question. And before that also there is a question that there is a dominant narrative which robs, one of agency, or it sort of undermines liberal discourses. So do we have, does the speaker have anything to say on this?
Can I carry on?
Yeah.
See, this alternative narrative is very much there. I will say there were two pioneers who tried to start this alternate narrative. One was Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer, second was K.N. Panikkar, who focused on this issue. But my feeling is that the bridges which take these things to the people are missing. Romila Thopar, in one of her lectures, I don't know which one, she pointed out that more of us have to act as bridges in the narrative which has been articulated by intellectuals, by tall scholars, and the people. Now, reaching Romila Thopar, Irfan Habib, Asghar Ali Engineer to the people, that is our job. So I see very strongly that alternative narrative is very much there. Question is the effort to reach this alternative narrative to the people. That is where we are lacking. That is where our efforts are falling short. And if we can strengthen on this point, more people joining it, we trying to associate with more people, we trying to cultivate young people, boys and girls, into this narrative, I think is definitely there. That is one thing I am sure, that there is no shortage of narrative. What is missing, as Romila Thopar correctly points out, is the lack of those bridges which can take this narrative to the average society, all people in the society. तो मैं हिंदी में थोड़ा सा बोल दूं कि एक दूसरी समझ है जो शुरुआत जिसमें डॉक्टर असगर अली इंजीनियर ने की थी, के.एन. पनिकर ने की थी, और बहुत सारी समझ जो रोमिला थॉपर, इरफान हबीब, ये लोगों ने बनाई है, ये है, पर इनको आम लोगों तक ले जाने के लिए जो एक पुल की जरूरत है, वो पुल का काम बहुत कम हो रहा है. हमें से ज्यादा लोगों को वॉलंटियर करना पड़ेगा, सामने आना पड़ेगा, और उस नैरेटिव को उस भाषा में लोगों तक ले जाना पड़ेगा जिस भाषा में वो बात करते हैं. भाषा मतलब, मेरा मतलब हिंदी, मराठी, इंग्लिश से नहीं है, मेरा मतलब है उस तरीके से. हम इसमें एकेडमिक नहीं हो सकते. हमको, जैसे मैं, सॉरी, इसमें मैं एक एग्जांपल दूंगा, जैसे कन्हैया कुमार का उदाहरण लीजिए. कन्हैया कुमार ने भी एक अल्टरनेटिव पकड़ा हुआ है, पर जितनी पॉपुलर स्टाइल से वो लोगों तक ले जाता है, वो लाखों लोगों तक पहुंच जाता है. वो एक हमको सबको सीखना पड़ेगा. वट एवर बी आवर एज, वी हैव टू एंश्योर कि आवर थिंग्स रीच द पीपल. इट इज नॉट टू सेटिस्फाई माई सेल्फ. मुझे खुद को खुश नहीं करना कि मैंने इतनी बड़ी बात बोल दी, मैंने इतना अच्छा लेक्चर दिया, वो मेरी सफलता का द्योतक नहीं है. दैट इज नॉट द इंडेक्स ऑफ माई सक्सेस. द इंडेक्स ऑफ माई सक्सेस इज ये बात कितने लोगों तक मैं पहुंचा पाया जो उनको उनके ईडियम में, उनकी भाषा में उनको समझी. ये हमारी सफलता का एक नजरिया होना चाहिए. और उसमें मैं निश्चित रूप से कन्हैया कुमार को एक आदर्श कम्युनिकेटर मानता हूं कि वो इन चीजों को लोगों तक पहुंचाता है. तो हमें से ज्यादा लोगों को नैरेटिव समझना है. और देखिए, शुरुआत तो खुद से होती है. एवरी बिगिनिंग इज विथ योर ओन सेल्फ. हमारे से शुरुआत होगी. हम उस नैरेटिव को डाइजेस्ट करें, आपस में शेयर करें, और फिर वो नैरेटिव को लोगों तक ले जाने के लिए कितने लोग हमारे साथ जुड़ सकते हैं, उनको जोड़ें. सोशल मीडिया का इस्तेमाल करें, यूट्यूब का इस्तेमाल करें. अब ये कितनी अच्छी बात है कि आज हम कोरोना के कारण मीटिंग नहीं बुला सकते जिसमें लाखों रुपए खर्च होते, पर एक जूम के माध्यम से हम करीब 80-90 लोग आपस में बात कर रहे हैं। तो ये मीडिया को ज्यादा से ज्यादा इस्तेमाल करके वो लोगों तक इस बात को ले जाना बहुत जरूरी है। सो आई पर्सनली फील दैट we have to use these new mechanisms and new media to reach this alternative narrative to the people in diverse ways, Yes, Neha.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I would just like to, I entirely agree with Professor Ram Punyani. I would just like to add one sentence. We have such rich resources in India from our past. Kabir, Ravidas, you name them, cultural resources. We haven't been able, we haven't used those cultural resources as much as we should be using to bring about education amongst the people, to make, you know, that rise above your emotions and your identities. We have to build bridges and have organizations, as Ram was pointing out. I entirely agree with Professor Ram Punyani.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Prabha Pandey here.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
we can hear you.
Yeah, so something keeps bothering me. I'm from the Aam Aadmi Party, and in our party, we have got many people from minority communities, especially Muslims. Okay. So what I see and what I have observed is that the politics of difference being pursued within the community by the community leadership. There is nowhere to move. They are caught in that net of difference. They are being kept there. Now, any outsider, like a non-Muslim like me, there's no way I can step into that space. It is a kind of indoctrination which begins from childhood. There is no way for a non-Muslim to enter the space of a Muslim community and tell them this is not right, this is not wrong, or even suggest it, or even sit there and listen to what their leaders are saying. There is no
Okay.
entry.
Okay. Can we have the speakers answer this, please?
Prabhaji,
Yeah,
if I may answer you that, yes, it is a big challenge. But if you look that only in minorities, I think we'll not be able to deal with it, or will not be able to address that issue completely. What you are saying is partly true. There are instances, the Khilafat agitation, the Khilafat procession in Mumbai are always led by a Hindu, and that dominant message is given. So non-Muslims can and do speak. Flavia Agnes, for example, has a voice in Muslim Personal Law Board. They listen to her. Actually, they are feeling at present boxed into a corner because of this highly polarized atmosphere in which they are being attacked by a section of media, politicians, law, bureaucrats. They're being attacked from all sides. So this is not yet. It is in this time that we should speak of crisis and speak about, be a voice of justice and social change. We have been
Can I
doing
add
that
something?
throughout, always, and will continue to do that.
I think Ram
we
wants
are
to say something.
There's just one thing. There's just one thing. How do we enter the space? The bridges that you are talking about that are being discussed, where is the bridge? If we are going to build that bridge, it can't be done single-handedly, right? Social media is a very good a tool. What I can see is social media, but I cannot see personal interaction and how we deal with the politics of difference within the community. Whether it is, I'm not only talking about minorities, it is even the majority. They are working on the politics of difference, dealing with the child right from birth, the differentiation within the family, with the neighbor. In every way, the religious practices, the culture, the difference is emphasized. So when difference is being emphasized at every point of your personal life, how do we suggest that we must deconstruct? How do we deconstruct? How do we start the process? With ideas, yes, but then there is already this powerful force which has been acting against us for hundreds of years. That is such a big block, such a big boulder to overcome. So I can see social media making inroads, but I don't see it making a very big difference.
Prabha ji,
Because, yeah.
Prabha ji, firstly, I must say your question is very, very crucial at our time.
Yeah.
Before I begin, I must also appreciate what Irfan has said, fully in full agreement. But first, one thing I want to point out, मैं एक जो बात कहना चाहता हूँ ये कि जो भी कम्युनिटी को इनसिक्योरिटी होती है, जब इनसिक्योरिटी बढ़ती है, वो घेटवाइज हो जाती है. घेटवाइज केवल शारीरिक रूप से नहीं, उसका मन भी कहीं तो भी डर जाता है. इसलिए वो एक सईद मिर्जा साहब की एक फिल्म है सलीम लंगड़े पे मत रो, तो उसमें देखिए कि जो मुस्लिम यूथ की जो साइकोलॉजी बनती है वो डर के माहौल से बनती है. इसलिए आपने बहुत अच्छा सवाल उठाया और मैं आपको थोड़ी जानकारी भी दे दूं कि ये आम आदमी पार्टी की तरफ से 2 ट्रेनिंग कैंप्स में मैं आया था, काठगोदाम और दिल्ली में, काठगोदाम और दिल्ली में. और मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि आप लोगों ने बहुत स्नेह से वो सुना और उन बातों को इनवाइब करने की कोशिश की. तो आप जो कह रही है स्पेस कौन सा है, वो स्पेस सोशल मीडिया तो एक चीज है, पर आप अगर कम्युनिटी में चारों तरफ देखें और चुनावी राजनीति से बाहर जाके देखें तो दिल्ली में ही आपको कई ऐसे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस मिलेंगे जो समाज के अंदर काम करना चाहते हैं. जैसे मैं दो बता सकता हूँ आपको. एक है कारवां मोहब्बत जो हमारे दोस्त हर्ष बंदर वहां चलाते हैं, दूसरे अनहद जो शबनम हाशमी चलाती हैं. तो ये ग्राउंड लेवल पे भी आपके साथ काम करने को तैयार रहेंगे, ऐसे मुझे पूरा विश्वास है. और कारवां हर्ष बंदर का जो कारवां मोहब्बत है उसका इतना इम्पैक्ट है कि उसमें सभी कम्युनिटी के लोग, जब उनको विश्वास होता है कि ये लोग हमारे सामने खड़े हैं, तो वो खुलना चालू होते हैं. क्योंकि जैसे आपने कहा कि करीब 100 साल से एक जिस माहौल में वो रहते हैं तो एक डर का माहौल बन जाता है. वो डर के माहौल को तोड़ने के लिए पहले उनसे एक आइडेंटिफाई करने का कि आपके दुख के साथ हम खड़े हैं, और उसके साथ जब हमारी पहचान बनती है तो फिर हम उनकी जो शेपिंग है, अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, उनको तोड़ने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं. और फिर मेरे ख्याल से, जहाँ तक मेरा अंदाज है, जितना मैं सोचता हूँ कि कारवां मोहब्बत हर्ष मंदर ने जो शुरू किया है वो इस दिशा में काफी सफल हो सकता है, उसको अगर आप थोड़ा और मजबूत करें. ऐसे ही मेरी जो हमारी मित्र हैं शबनम हाशमी, उनका अनहद भी ऐसे ग्राउंड लेवल पे चीजों को आगे बढ़ाने की कोशिश करता है. तो आम आदमी पार्टी ने जो ट्रेनिंग कैंप किए थे, मैं तो 2 ही अटेंड कर पाया, तो ऐसे और ट्रेनिंग कैंप के साथ साथ आपके जो कार्यकर्ता जाते हैं वो राजनीतिक काम के साथ अगर सामाजिक काम को अपने काम के साथ जोड़ सकें, वो पता नहीं ये, क्योंकि मुझे इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स का कोई अनुभव नहीं है, मैं आपको कोई सलाह नहीं दे सकता, पर इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स में केवल कैलकुलेशन आता है, हमारा कैंडिडेट जीतेगा या नहीं है, जीतेगा, उसके हिसाब से हम काम करते हैं. और ये सोशल बात जो हम कर रहे हैं उसमें हम केवल प्यार की, मोहब्बत की, इंसानियत की, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की बात करते हैं, उसमें हम चुनावी गणित नहीं रखते हैं. तो what is needed is that political workers like you not only think of electoral politics and coming to power, but also associate these things in your work at social level, which I am sure is possible. And your question is a very good beginning. Probably within your party, if you can raise it, those type of efforts associating with organizations which have grassroots present amongst Muslims, मुसलमानों के अंदर जो जिनकी प्रेजेंस है, जिनको मुसलमानों में विश्वास आ गया है क्योंकि ये लोग उनके साथ हमेशा खड़े रहे हैं, तो उसके साथ अगर आप काम करें तो निश्चित रूप से एक बहुत बड़ा ऐतिहासिक काम आप करेंगी.
We have very little time. There are few hands raised. Before that, Abbas Alvi would want to make a brief comment. So just a very, very brief comment, please.
Thanks a lot for asking that. Prabhaji's question, actually, I fully don't agree on that part, what she's saying. We have been grown up in India. and living out of India from last 40 years. But India, we have seen, we know the word khala, mausi, mama. That's what we have grown up in the streets and the towns and everywhere. But what you're talking about the situation now, I will tell you what we are doing here in Australia. We are using the creativity as a medium of bringing different religions on together, like Sufi music, for example. And at that part, we have the Hindus, Muslims, Christians, everybody is together. Sikh, everybody is together. And or the poetry, for example, poetry, we do Kavi Sammelan, Mushara joint forums, and we invite everybody. And they are the themes that will not hurt anybody's religious feeling or something. It's a very successful medium to bring the people together. I think you people need to do the similar sort of activities, and probably that's the only way you can bring different religious people on one platform, which has been very badly. Thank you.
Okay. There are certain hands raised. So, Amina, is there anything Amina wants to say? Or then we can move on to Habib Khan.
I sent a question on chat box to Mr. Professor Punyani.
Please.
I have sent a question to Professor Punyani Sahab in chat box.
In chat box?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you read it for me?
I'll go it now. Just a minute.
Can you just read it out, because now it's difficult for me to trace if the question has gone.
Just a minute.
You can
just a minute. I'll try. Just a minute. Hold on, please.
Please.
And this will be the last question because we're already running out of time. Sandhya ma'am, in the meanwhile, if you want to talk, yes, we can have the comment.
कोई बोल रहा है क्या?
नहीं आप बोलिए अभी.
बोलिए.
मुझे एक ऐसे बात करना है कि प्रभा जी ने ये जो सवाल उठाया वो बहुत अहमपूर्ण है, और दूसरे साथ साथ मुझे ऐसा ही लगता है कि कल्चरल एक्सचेंजेस तो हमारे होते रहेंगे, लेकिन मैंने हमेशा देखा है कि वो चाहे वो रूरल एरिया हो, चाहे कोई वार्ड हो, जहाँ हिंदू मुस्लिम जो साथ में रहते हैं, वो जो तबके के एक निचले तबके के लोग साथ साथ में रहते हैं, वहाँ इश्यूज होते हैं कि जो भी कुछ रिसोर्सेज आते हैं गवर्नमेंट से, उसमें उनको ये मुस्लिम बस्तियों को नहीं मिलते हैं, चाहे वो रोड का पैसा हो, चाहे वो सैनिटेशन का हो पैसा.
वन लाइन
और वो पॉलिटिकल पार्टी से वो अगर हम उस तरीके से वो कर सकते हैं, इसके बारे में भी बात कर सकते हैं कि वो भी रिसोर्सेस उनको मिलना चाहिए. वो अगर नहीं मिलते हैं तो वो भी हमारे साथ नहीं जाएंगे, हमारे साथ नहीं आएंगे. वो कोई प्रोग्राम में या आप कुछ भी कल्चरल प्रोग्राम रखो, उनको लगता है कि क्या मेरे काम का है, मुझे पानी नहीं पीने का मिल रहा है, मुझे रास्ता नहीं है चलने के लिए, जो पैसा आता है वो नहीं मिलता है. तो ये मेरे बहुत सारे मेरा एक्सपीरियंस है ऐसा कि वो और माइनॉरिटी इश्यूज के बारे में मैंने खुद सरकार का जो था माइनॉरिटी कमीशन था, उनके जो भी स्कीम्स थे उसके बारे में महाराष्ट्र में मैंने पूरा वो स्टडी किया है, और तभी भी मुझे यही आया था कि ये सब जो हमारे उनकी जो जरूरत है, इकोनॉमिक जरूरतें हैं, मैं वेजेस के लिए नहीं बोलती हूँ, लेकिन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो उनको चाहिए, वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में हमें कुछ ना कुछ हमारा रोल निभाना चाहिए एज अ लोकल रिसोर्स पर्सन.
Okay. So, and there is one more response from Rano, Professor Rano Jain. Yeah, very briefly.
Thank you, Neha. I'll take only 1 minute. This is in response to Prabhaji. Prabhaji, this anti-CAA movement has revealed a very strong face of secular young Muslims. But now what is happening is pushing them to get Muslim support, because frankly, all the political parties are quiet when they are being put to jail just because they are participating in CAA movement. They're being put to jail. All the political parties are quiet. Nobody is doing anything. We are pushing them. We are pushing them to seek, some kind of a Muslim support, especially those who are political aspirant. Why? I mean, are we there to say, help support secularism and progressive thinking? What are we doing, especially our party, doing to protect the interest of these individuals who very courageously have come on the street and are talking about, are giving a different definition to secularism? I cannot go into it. Perhaps I will come back to you all later. Sorry, Neha, took more than 1 minute.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay.
मैं इसको ऐड कर दूं, मिल नहीं रहा है. My question is not getting there.
जी जी, आपका आखिरी सवाल है, आप जरा जल्दी से ऐड कर दीजिए.
चलिए जल्दी कर दूं. मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि ये जो कम्युनिज्म जो हो रहा है, जो एक पॉलिटिकल ग्रुप की तरफ इशारा करते हैं आप लोग, तो दलित कहते हैं कि हम हिंदू नहीं है, ट्राइबल्स कहते हैं हम हिंदू नहीं है, उसके बाद जो लिंगायत कहते हैं हम हिंदू नहीं है. महाराष्ट्र में भी एक लोग है, वो शिव धर्म के नाम से जो होते हैं वो कहते हैं कि हम हिंदू नहीं है. वी आर नथिंग टू डू विद हिंदू धर्म और बेसिक धर्म. तो क्या है ये जो सोशल ग्रुप्स है जो जिस तरह की बातें कर रहे हैं, उसका अटेंशन डाइवर्ट करने के लिए भी जो है तो इस तरह की जो चीजें हो रही है, वन ऑफ द रीजन बिहाइंड इट, कम्युनिज्म का जो जोर बढ़ रहा है हमारे मुल्क में, ये है मेरा क्वेश्चन. यू गॉट माय पॉइंट सर?
हाँ, मोर और लेस में समझा. पर देखिए, ये जो ट्रेंड्स है ना, ये ट्रेंड्स मेरे ख्याल से बहुत छोटे हैं. जैसे महाराष्ट्र में शिव धर्म की बात हुई थी, वो थोड़े दिन चली, फिर बाद में खत्म हो गई. और जैन धर्म के कई लोग तो आरएसएस के बहुत बड़े सपोर्टर हैं. कई लोग बोलते हैं कि हम तो हिंदू धर्म का पार्ट नहीं है. और आरएसएस का प्रोपेगेंडा इतना स्ट्रांग है कि वो जैसे कहेगी कि सिख धर्म भी हिंदू धर्म का भाग है, वगैरह वगैरह. तो ये जो दलित के बीच में भी आप देखिए, दलित के बीच में भी अंबेडकर जी ने जब बुद्ध धर्म स्वीकार किया, उसके बाद बहुत बड़े तबके ने स्वीकार नहीं किया. अभी भी कई दलितों का एक तबका है जिसने बुद्ध धर्म को स्वीकार नहीं किया. और यहाँ दो ताकतें चल रही हैं. एक तरफ से आरएसएस का काम है जो दलितों के बीच में जाके, अंग्रेजी में जिसको कहते हैं कोऑप्ट करती है. एक प्रोसेस होती है सेंस्क्रिटाइजेशन. मतलब दलितों के बीच में जाके इंप्रेशन देती है, देखो हम भी हैं तुम्हारे साथ, तो दलितों को बड़ा गर्व महसूस होता है. और ये आरएसएस की स्ट्रेटेजी केवल दलितों के बारे में भी नहीं है, आदिवासियों के बारे में भी है. तो ये एक दो चीज का ये चक्र चल रहा है. और इसके लिए कैसे करना, क्योंकि हमारा काम अपने आप में इतना कमजोर है, और आरएसएस जो 95 ईयर से काम कर रही है, उसके तो अभी प्रचारक गांव-गांव तक जाकर इस प्रकार की बातों में भाग लेते हैं, जिससे खास तौर से दलित और आदिवासियों को अपनी तरफ जीतने का वो बहुत बड़ा एक प्रयास कर रहे हैं.
Okay. Ram, is that the response?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Unfortunately, we will have to cut short any more discussion that one may wish for, because it's really late. So very quickly, it's my absolute pleasure to even thank all of you. I think it was very relevant, very focused discussion. Both the speakers, Ram brilliantly gave us a historical glimpse into the issues we're facing today, and what he shared with us has laid the foundation of the discourses that we have today. And also Irfan sir, who very briefly but really very sensible suggestions for the way ahead, and I think that it has been everyone's concern. So thank you to both the speakers, and most importantly, thank you to all of you who have joined us from different parts of the world. This is encouraging. This will encourage us to keep these discourses alive even during these challenging times of the pandemic, social distancing, hatred, disturbing news. But yeah, this can be a glimpse of light, because we all come together on a platform and share our opinions, and this will of course translate into our work on the field. So thank you so much everyone, and be safe.
Thank you, Neha. Thanks everybody.
And the CSS,
nice.
All the participants, very happy with a very good response from all participants. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.